Today, we're going to dive into the incredibly serene and symbolic world of Japanese gardens. And, it's a world that might just challenge everything you think a garden is supposed to be.
So right off the bat, I want you to just think about this question. When you picture a garden, you probably imagine these vibrant flower beds, right? Just a riot of color. But what if that wasn't the point at all? What if the real goal was something much more subtle, something way more profound?
And there it is. That's the fundamental difference. The ultimate purpose of a Japanese landscape garden isn't really about horticulture. It's about evoking a specific mood, a particular feeling. It's really an art form that's designed for contemplation.
So what does it actually mean to design a space just to create a feeling? Well, this question really takes us to the very heart of the Japanese art of landscape.
Essentially, the whole point of a good Japanese landscape garden is to create a living picture. It's like a slice of nature, but not just any random slice. It's an idealized version, carefully constructed to capture the absolute essence of a natural scene, like a mountain forest or a rocky coastline, and then distill it into a form that speaks directly to your soul.
So, how do you build a feeling? Well, it's done through this philosophy of design that's all centered on one key idea: repose. Let's take a look at the principles that guide the gardener, who is, let's be honest, really an artist.
The garden is basically thought of as a retreat, a place to get away from the noise and chaos of the outside world. Every single element, from the biggest rock to the tiniest patch of moss, is placed with this intention of fostering a sense of peace and quiet.
And this feeling of repose, well, it's achieved through some pretty strict aesthetic rules. As you can see, it all starts with harmony. Scale and proportion are absolutely crucial. A huge stone would just look ridiculous in a tiny garden. Unity makes sure the whole scene works as a single picture, and balance is key. And here's the interesting part. It's usually an asymmetrical balance, which mimics the beautiful imperfection of nature. If you neglect any of these principles, poof, that essential feeling of repose is completely gone.
This quote from the famous tea master Rikyū just perfectly captures the whole poetic idea. He wasn't thinking about flower beds. He wanted to create the feeling of a specific, poignant moment, that quiet solitude of a remote shrine in the fall. That's the level of artistry we're talking about here.
So how is this artistry expressed? Well, the Japanese garden has its own language, and its main vocabulary doesn't consist of flowers, but of stones and water. Before anything else, before a single plant is even considered, the gardener thinks about the stones. They are the absolute foundation of the design. They're chosen for their shape, their color, their texture, and they give the entire composition its structure and its scale. Seriously, one stone placed incorrectly can throw off the entire balance of the picture.
And they're not just random rocks either. Stones are given these poetic names and specific roles. The guardian stone, for example, is the anchor of a waterfall. The stone of worship marks the perfect spot for you to stand and contemplate. The seagull resting stone instantly makes you think of a coastal scene. And the Elysian Isle, well, that's a group of rocks that suggests the shape of a tortoise, which brings this whole mythical dimension to the landscape. It's a really deep, symbolic system.
The other key element is water, and it can be expressed in two just brilliant ways. You might have actual water, right, in these carefully crafted ponds and streams, but where that's not possible, water is suggested. Raked white sand becomes a flowing river. Pebbles become the shallows of a lake. This is sometimes called dried-up water scenery, and it's just a testament to the garden's focus on imagination and feeling. It's so clever.
And of course, we have the iconic stone lantern. These were originally offerings at temples, but they were adopted into garden design. And what's really valued most isn't some new, pristine lantern, but one that actually shows its age, covered in a thick, green canopy of velvet moss. It's a sign of time and permanence.
What's so remarkable is how these complex principles of symbolism and design can apply to landscapes of any size, from the absolutely vast to the totally microscopic. So on one end of the spectrum, you have the immense gardens of the feudal lords, the daimyo. These were sprawling landscapes that would recreate famous natural scenes on a grand scale. And then on the complete opposite end, you have hachiniwa, or dish gardens. Here, the very same principles are used to create a perfect, complete landscape in something as small as a shallow china dish.
And making a hachiniwa is just a masterclass in meticulous art. You start with sifted earth to form mountains. Tiny dwarfed trees that are years old but maybe only inches high are so carefully planted. Different colored sands are used for water and for earth. And then,
Finally, these microscopic models of temples or boats or pagodas are placed to complete the illusion. It's a whole world right in the palm of your hand.
Okay, so all this talk of stones and sand and moss, it brings us right back to our original question, doesn't it? If the garden is all about creating a feeling through landscapes, where in the world are the flowers?
Well, the answer is that flowers are used, but with extreme selectivity. Like it says here, they don't just enter the scene for their own sake. It's not about creating a huge mass of color. Instead, a flowering shrub might be chosen because its natural shape fits the composition, or a specific flower might be included for its deep cultural meaning.
And the taste is incredibly specific. The favorites are flowers like the iris, wisteria, and lotus, but others, like the rose and the lily, are often rejected because their charms are considered, well, too obvious, too simple. Even a plant as vibrant as the azalea is often valued more for its ability to be clipped into a certain shape than for its blossoms, so much so that it might get trimmed right as it's starting to flower.
So, ultimately, a Japanese garden isn't a collection of plants. It is a single, unified, living sculpture that's designed by an artist.
The person who creates these spaces is really a garden artist, not just a gardener. Their medium is nature itself. Every single element is deliberately chosen and placed to contribute to a single harmonious composition. It's a work of art designed to evoke a feeling, a picture that's meant to last for centuries.
And I just want to leave you with this final thought from another master, Kobori Enshu. His ideal garden wasn't some sunny field of flowers, but the sweet solitude of a landscape clouded by moonlight. That, I think, perfectly captures that deep, contemplative, and poetic feeling that lies at the very heart of this incredible art form. So as we finish up, I want you to think about the spaces around you. If you were to design a garden not for plants, but purely for an emotion, for tranquility, maybe for solitude, or for joy, what would it look like? What feeling would your garden create?